Hey nerds, welcome to Flash, Theories, and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd, Bad Nerd. So, I didn't do an episode last week, I was on vacation, but this was the two-parter with Supergirl, and all in all, I thought it was actually kind of a weak episode. They really changed the character of Music Meister. His powers made him seem more like a Batmite or a Mr. Mxyzptlk, but just with a kind of coma-induced musical kind of spin on it. But he could travel almost anywhere he wanted. He could do anything he wanted, pretty much. So he's an unusual character, and they made him more of a hero than the typical villain that he is. So, not saying that in itself was a bad thing. I just think it was a kind of strange use of the character. But all that being said, this week on Flash was really a outstanding episode, really solid. It answered some questions, gave us some more questions, and there was tons of name drops and things like that. So jumping right into it, the first thing that we got to talk about is just the industrial name drops. Now, there were three big companies that were just kind of rambled off, and these are the companies that Abracadabra was stealing from. First, you have Stag Industries or Stag Enterprises. This is owned by Simon Stagg. We've seen this company before in this universe, but if you're not familiar with it, Justice League did an episode with him in this company. He's appeared all over the place, big in the comics, but he is, and this company is related to the creation of Metamorpho, who is a Justice League character. He's a hero. He can essentially change his body into any element that he wants, or any combination of elements. He's really strong and really powerful if he, there's a lot of creativity with that character. Does this mean we're going to see Metamorpho? It's possible, but not anytime soon. The second company that was name dropped was Cord Industries. Now, this is the company of Ted Cord. Ted Cord was the second Blue Beetle, and he got the title of that character was passed on to him from his teacher, his archaeology teacher, Dan Garrett. Once Dan Garrett passed away, Ted Cord took up the mantle, and he was kind of a Batman like character. He wasn't able to use the scarab that you see Jaime Reyes using, and that the original Blue Beetle did use, so he created his own way of being that hero. And then the last one is Mercury Labs. Now, this is a company that is unique to the Arrowverse. It doesn't exist in the comics per se, but it was a nice little way to bolster up this company by saying, when Cisco was talking about it and saying that it was kind of the motherlode of advanced technology. And we have seen this company multiple times before. Two villains have been associated with it, the Bug-Eyed Bandit and Trajectory. So this is a big location in the Arrowverse, and the head of it, Tina McGee, has been in Flash, and she's familiar with the team. She knows who Barry is. So it's an interesting little name drop there of all the kind of the big three. Notice there's no mention of any kind of Wayne Industries or Wayne Enterprises or anything like that. But next, Abracadabra. So he's clearly not Savitar, like one of the theories that was going had, and I'm pretty sure he's not H.R. Wells, but we'll get to that in a minute. But he's from the 64th century, and he just has a ton of technology at his disposal, so it looks like magic. Nanotechnology specifically is what they say. But the question is, what was his motivation? He wanted to get home, but why was he in the past? Why was he trapped there? And because here's the thing, in the comics, he comes back to the past because he wants to be recognized as the greatest magician ever. And in the future, everyone is familiar with the technology, so it doesn't look like magic. It just looks like a guy who's using tech to kind of try and show off. So he comes to the past to try and make a name for himself and be so famous that everyone knows his name. Well, they kind of took that away because he's just trying to get home, and we don't entirely know why. It's just he's there, he knows stuff, and he can cross dimensions. Obviously, with advanced technology, that wouldn't be an issue, but it's just hard to understand why. I think they had a really cool character here, really cool effects, really cool ways of playing with him, but I don't think he was necessarily used to his fullest potential, and so that's a little disappointing. But definitely not Savitar, and I'm going to say he's definitely not HR. But that takes us to the next thing, HR. Where was he? I don't buy his story that he was off with a lady that he had met, but maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe we're supposed to be suspecting him. I mean, they really want us to, because we saw him in the past on the roof with the gun, and now he's kind of disappeared. They're really trying to make us suspicious of him in some way, but maybe he really is just that innocent, but there is something more going on with him, and we're going to figure that out. Next, Joe's breakdown throughout this episode, and at the very end where he just is losing it on the couch to Iris. I gotta say that was probably one of the most gut-wrenching moments for me. Hearing him talk about as a dad, watching over Iris when she was young, always checking to make sure she was still breathing. If you don't have kids, let me tell you, that is true for every parent for their first kid. Just always checking to make sure they're okay, never knowing. That first night, they sleep the whole night, you wake up in a panic and you have to go in there and check. So that was written by a parent, I can tell. And I actually really love that. That was probably one of my favorite moments in the show so far. Definitely more believable than a lot of the stuff between like Barry and Iris, but that was a great moment. Now, next. And this is kind of going to be a bigger point about who the villain for season 4 is. Abracadabra rambled off a bunch of names when he was talking about the people who have really been hounding Barry. And we hear Thawne, we hear Zoom, we got his Savitar. But the fourth name that he mentions, and everyone is jumping on this as, is he the villain for season 4? And this was DeVoe, Clifford DeVoe, and he's known as the Thinker. Now, the one reason a lot of people are jumping on this as the villain for season 4 is during PaleyFest, which is a big, almost like convention for TV shows. Every night there's 1 or 2 shows that have panels, very much like a Comic-Con Hall H panel. And the producers with The Flash said season 4's villain will not be another speedster. So everyone is looking to who it could be, and the fact that this name was dropped had everyone going, this is the villain for season 4. He's the main villain. But I just don't buy it. One, I don't think they would let us know who the villain is this quickly. And 2, he's not that intimidating of a villain. He's like a Riddler knockoff. He was a district attorney that was sick with how the justice system wasn't working, and so he kind of takes the law in his own hands, and then he turns to crime, and he just isn't very intimidating. He's basically a Riddler knockoff. He so thoroughly calculates his plans, he overplans them to the point of perfection, that he's so confident he would essentially give Flash clues to how to stop him. Now, eventually, he actually comes down with cancer, and before he dies, he's able to digitize his brain, and he basically becomes a living AI, because his consciousness and his memory and everything is totally digitized. And that is kind of the form he takes later on. So it's possible that we could see a 2-part episode with him where we have him in flesh and then we have him in the AI version, but I just don't see him being the big bad for the entire season. That being said, there are 4 possibilities I have at the moment for who the big bad could be. And a couple of them are way out there, but I thought, you know what, it's not a speedster, so let's pick some crazy ones. The first one is Neron. And this is basically DC's version of the devil. He's a big thorn in the side of the Flash, specifically Wally West. He steals the souls of the rogues and forces them to work for him. And at one point, the only way Wally can defeat him is he trades his soul and his love for his basically Wally West's one true love was Linda Park, and not the Linda from the show, because she was in a relationship with Barry, obviously. But in the comics, Linda and his love is given to Neron in order to stop him and save everyone else. But their love is too pure and too strong, and it overpowers Neron and turns him nice. And so there's a connection there with Wally that would be very interesting, and it would be a character that honestly they wouldn't know how to deal with. They could deal with his machinations of bringing the rogues against him, but they wouldn't know how to deal with him otherwise, and it would take some kind of unique personal sacrifice from either Barry or Wally. I could see them taking the Wally and Linda aspect and giving it to Barry and Iris. But that's just one option. The next option is another character that I'm assuming is just, you pronounce it Kilgore, but it's kill, then G with a percent sign, R-E. But he is a electromagnetic life form from outer space. He also has some strong connections with Wally West, and at one point he took over Star Labs, some projects that Star Labs were working on, and all the scientists, except for Tina McGee. Now that name should ring familiar because she's the head of Mercury Labs. So she has a connection to this guy. There's a lot going on here that it could fit. And Kilgore actually becomes kind of he's a villain, but then he also just kind of isn't necessarily bad. Wally sees through a deception at one point that he's trying to do, and as a gift, he gives them a small capsule. This capsule is like an emergency first aid thing, so when Wally was shot once, it activated it and healed him, and it repaired the hole in his chest. So he's an interesting character. They could use him in conjunction with the Thinker, since you have the Thinker in his digitized form could somehow summon Kilgore, or they could be linked in a way, but it's kind of a stretch, I know. Now the next two that I thought would be possible are a different take on the villain, and it's less a single all-powerful entity and more that Barry and Team Flash would have to go up against organizations. And the first is Blacksmith and the New Rogues. Now Blacksmith is like a crime boss, and she's very powerful. She's been running crime in the city for years before anyone knew she was even there. And at one point later on, she gains the ability to merge organic material and metal. So it's an interesting power, and you top that off with her being a crime boss, and Barry now has to deal with a whole organization and not just one villain. It would make for a different show. So that I think is interesting. And the other group, also an organization, but a little different, similar to kind of stuff we're seeing with Savitar, but obviously not Speedster, is Cobra. Cobra is a massive cult bent on world domination. The leader is like the chosen one who's been born and groomed for the sole purpose of leading Cobra to world domination. That's Cobra spelled with a K, not like G.I. Joe. But these are some of the possibilities I see. Who do you guys think the villain for Season 4 could be, and what do you think of the options I've thrown out there? So let me know, guys. What did you think of the episode, and where do you think this is all going? Last chance to put your theories on for who Savitar is. I think it's got to be Barry at this point. I don't know of any other character that would give us the reaction and response they all claim we're going to give. Because if it's no one we know, we're not going to care. And nobody else on the team, I think, would give us that kind of response with that power. Wally and Barry are really the only ones. So let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to check out my other theories, Supergirl and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is back next week, so don't forget to check that out. Until next week, guys, or next time. I'm not sure if the episode's next week or if it skips, but until next time, this has been Brian from Good Nerd, Bad Nerd, and this has been Flash, Theories and Conspiracies.